countries are picking Canada instead of America. Here's what's happening for months after President Trump said he wanted to change how the world does business. Something big is happening. People in Canada are getting worried because there might be a big fight about trade with America. America owes $37 trillion. That's more money than ever before. Big contracts worth billions of dollars are disappearing overnight. Machines that used to make cool stuff are now just sitting there doing nothing in empty factories in the middle part of America that across the oceans, companies in Japan, Germany, and Britain are quietly changing their phone numbers instead of calling. Detroit or Houston in America, they're now calling Toronto and Vancouver in Canada. What happens when countries that used to be America's friends stop calling America and start calling Canada instead? If this keeps happening, it's not just about buying and selling stuff. It's about power, jobs, and staying safe. How much has things already changed? And how much more can things change before something really bad happens? Number 7, Brazil, the farm superpower, makes a choice picture the world's biggest farm country. This country feeds hundreds of millions of people around the world. But now it's quietly cutting off its connection to American technology. And this is really big news. For more than 100 years, Brazil's farms have needed American help. Machines and new ideas. Think about huge soybean fields that go on forever and ever. Cattle farms that are bigger than some whole states in America. Coffee farms that make coffee for people all over the world. All of this was powered by American farm technologies, but the friendship that lasted over 100 years is falling apart. In the last year and a half, Brazil bought 71% more farm technology from Canada. At the same time, they bought 24% less from American companies. We're talking about super smart farming computers, fancy watering systems, and robots that watch crops grow. This stuff is what makes modern farming work. So what made this huge change happen? American farm technology companies only cared about selling stuff in America. They had too many rules about selling things to other countries, so they couldn't make their machines work for Brazil's giant farms. When Brazilian farmers needed computers that could watch millions of acres of farmland at the same time, American companies tried to sell them bigger versions of machines made for small Iowa corn farms to call. Canadian companies did something totally different. They sent their smartest engineers to actually live on Brazilian farms. These engineers studied the special problems of farming in hot, tropical places with really big farms and complicated ways of getting food to stores. What they came up with were custom solutions that Brazilian farmers couldn't get anywhere else. But this goes way beyond just selling machines. Brazilian farm companies are now giving money to research centers in Canadian provinces. They're sharing decades of knowledge about huge farming operations with Canadian partners. Seeds, plant food, and food processing technology that used to come from America to Brazil are now being made together in Canada. The money flow has completely switched directions. Big Brazilian companies are buying Canadian farm operations, building food processing plants, and creating supply chains that completely skip American suppliers. Brazilian engineers and farm experts are working full-time in Canadian facilities, sharing techniques that took many generations to develop. A top boss at one of Brazil's biggest farm companies, who didn't want to give his name, explained why things changed. We needed partners who understood that modern farming needs long-term teamwork, not just one-time deals. Canada became that partner. The damage to American farm businesses has been terrible. Equipment makers across the Midwest are watching billion-dollar Brazilian contracts disappear. Seed companies are losing customers to Canadian-Brazilian joint businesses. Farm research universities are seeing their global influence disappear as innovation centers move north. Manufacturing towns in Nebraska and Kansas that made farm equipment are making less stuff. Research facilities in Texas and California are cutting farm programs as international partnerships fall apart. The effects are spreading through supply chains that once seemed unbreakable. But if you think losing the world's farm superpower is bad, wait until you see what happened with America's closest friend in Asia. Number 6, Japan. The quiet energy revolution pictured Japan's industrial heartland stopping completely because American energy sue. Players can't deliver on time. That scary situation almost became real. And it explains why America's most loyal Asian partner is quietly building a new future without American energy for 70 years. Japan counted on American energy knowledge and supplies to power its industrial success from rebuilding after the war to the technology revolution. American natural gas terminals, coal shipments, and energy technology kept Japanese factories running 24 hours a day. That 70-year partnership is falling apart right in front of our eyes. The collapse started with reliability, or rather, not being reliable. Japanese utility companies work with very tight schedules and small profit margins. When American natural gas terminals started having delays because of rules and political fights, Japanese power plants almost had blackouts. Industrial operations worth billions were at risk. Canadian energy companies saw the opportunity and moved like surgeons. New export terminals in British Columbia started offering Japanese utilities something American. Suppliers couldn't promise predictable delivery schedules with long-term contracts that had fixed prices and zero political problems, yet the move away from American suppliers has been fast and brutal. Over $23 billion in long-term energy contracts have moved from American facilities to Canadian ones in just 18 months. Big Japanese industrial companies are now signing exclusive deals with Canadian energy companies that last through 2035. But energy was just the starting point. Japan's car revolution, the switch to electric vehicles that will define the next. DECEDE is now being powered by Canadian materials instead of American ones. Lithium from Quebec mines, cobalt from Ontario operations, and rare earth elements processed in Canadian facilities are flowing across the Pacific to Japanese factories. The technology sharing has followed. What the materials, Japanese engineers are now working full-time in Canadian facilities, sharing advanced manufacturing techniques and creating joint research programs. Innovation that once flowed naturally between Tokyo and California is now concentrated in the Toronto-Vancouver area. Japanese car giants like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan are building research and development centers in Canadian provinces. They're funding expansion of Canadian mining operations, training Canadian workers in advanced manufacturing techniques, and building integrated supply chains that will work independently of American suppliers for decades. The strategic effects go beyond energy markets. Japanese companies are now investing in Canadian renewable energy projects, funding wind and solar facilities across Canadian provinces. What started as emergency sourcing has become permanent partnership, with Japanese firms committing billions to Canadian infrastructure development. Energy workers across Texas and Louisiana are watching their facilities work at reduced capacity as Japanese contracts disappear. Mining communities in Wyoming and Montana are seeing operations scaled back. The effects are spreading through American supply chains that once seemed unshakable. A senior executive at Japan's largest utility company, who didn't want to give his name, captured the new reality. We cannot base our industrial future on suppliers who use energy as a political tool rather than a business necessity. Canada treats energy as business. The strategic implications go far beyond energy markets. When the world's third-largest economy chooses Canadian partners over American ones, it signals a fundamental shift in global confidence. But this energy revolution is nothing compared to what's happening with Europe's industrial powerhouse. Number 5. Germany, the precision engineering exoducimagine, the economic powerhouse that rebuilt Europe, choosing to abandon its oldest ally for a competitor nobody saw coming. That's the story happening in Germany, and it represents perhaps the most shocking betrayal in modern trade history. Germany built its post-war economic miracle on American partnership. Marshall Plan aid, technology sharing, and connected supply chains created the foundation for German industrial dominance. From BMW assembly lines to chemical plants along the Rhine, German precision engineering was powered by American innovation and materials. That 75-year partnership is collapsing with stunning speed. The car sector tells the story in clear numbers. German car manufacturers have moved 43% of their North American parts sourcing from American suppliers to Canadian ones over the past 2 years. We're talking about advanced battery materials, precision metals, and specialized chemicals needed for electric car production. What caused this industrial exodus? American suppliers became victims of their own political system. Rule uncertainty, trade policy changes, and supply chain problems made it impossible for German engineers to plan production schedules or guarantee delivery promises to customers worldwide. Canadian suppliers offered something German precision. Manufacturing demanded predictability, fixed price contracts, guaranteed delivery windows, and stable rule frameworks that allowed German companies to plan years ahead instead of months. The technology sharing has been breathed up.